What's up, boxing fans? This is TBE Boxing back at you again. Today's topic, the post-fight analysis. Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia. Also, Errol Spence did not say that Terence Crawford will get his turn. Stop lying, Champside. Let's chop it up and see what it's all about.
Got the money for minutes, pretty bitch, gotta show me titties. This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? That life before riches, huh? That life before riches, huh? Pretty bitch, show me titties, huh? And I got the glazzy run up on me, I'ma make you get it. I'ma make you get it.
Okay, boxing fans, let's talk some boxing today. All right, I've been away for a while, didn't get a chance to do any videos for the past couple of weeks, but I'm back. Okay, so the Danny Garcia Errol Spence fight. I want to talk about that fight, and then we're gonna talk about, this whole Champside saying that Terence Crawford will get his turn. He basically misquoted, consciously misquoted what Errol Spence said about Terence Crawford. He wasn't even talking about Terence Crawford. He basically said that everybody will get their turn. Never mentioned Terence Crawford. And then Champside, wrote in Terence Crawford's name just to make it say that Terence Crawford will get his turn. I mean, it's so. I mean, why is he doing that? I mean, and these guys are. I mean, they're so desperate to make it seem like Errol Spence really wants to fight Terence Crawford, when we know he don't want to fight Terence Crawford. He's been ducking Terence Crawford for 3 years now. So I mean, why are you putting words in Terence Crawford's mouth, Champside? Stop the nonsense, man. But anyway, let's get to the post-fight analysis between about the Danny Garcia Errol Spence fight. Okay, so I saw the fight, okay, and it was a great fight. Both guys, gave it their best, it looks like. And I will have to say that Errol Spence showed, what he was about in that fight. I mean, basically, he put on a great performance. He basically nullified Danny Garcia. And, the truth be known, he actually fought Danny Garcia better than Keith Thurman did, better than Sean Porter did, Showtime. And so, so far he fought the best fight against Danny Garcia that I've seen. I mean, he basically nullified everything that Danny Garcia tried to do. And, he didn't really seem to be worried about Danny Garcia's power in this fight like Sean Porter and Keith Thurman was. I mean, the fight basically went about the way I kind of expected it to go. I mean, you can look at my pre-fight analysis of the fight, and then, and you will see that I more or less predicted that Errol Spence would win by decision, and that the effective weapon for him in this fight would be the jab, and it was. Okay, so because again, Errol Spence is a fundamentally sound fighter, okay, and he knows the value of a good jab, and he used that jab effectively against Danny Garcia. So basically, it went more or less the way I thought it would go, except for the fact that Errol Spence was actually a bit more effective than I thought he would have been. Okay, I mean, I knew he would have used the jab to to good effect, but I didn't think that he would be as effective against Danny Garcia as he was, and he basically showed that when it comes to Danny Garcia, he fought the best fight against Danny Garcia, the most effective fight against Danny Garcia than the rest of the welterweights that fought Danny Garcia. I mean, Danny Garcia lost all the welterweights, but he lost worse to Spence than he did the rest of those guys. So Spence showed some some good work in there. It was a workmanlike effort. Nobody got knocked down or knocked out. There was no stoppage or anything. It was just a decision fight, which is what I more or less expected. Because again, if Spence couldn't stop Mikey Garcia. I didn't really see him stopping Danny Garcia, but I figured he would outbox him, and that's exactly what he did. He showed, effective jab, effective movement, good body shot. He pressed the fight. He fought at his pace. He basically pushed the pace, and had Danny Garcia on the back foot for most of the fight. And it was a great performance. I mean, you can't take that away from him. I mean, especially after coming back, after a year, of not fighting, and after the accident and after the beating that he got from Sean Porter. So he was very effective, more effective than I thought he would have been under the circumstances. So you got to give him credit for that. Great performance. Now, he did show some weaknesses there that I thought that someone else, say like Crawford, would have taken advantage of, but Danny Garcia was not able to capitalize on them. Okay, because Spence was there to be hit, but Danny Garcia wasn't really pushing the pace. He was relying on his counterpunching ability and letting Spence push the pace, and so he was always behind the 8 ball. You know what I mean? He should have been more aggressive. He should let his hands go more. Okay, but again, that jab was in his face. Excuse me, and Spence, basically pressed him, and you can see that Danny Garcia didn't get a chance to really do, what he really wanted to do, whatever that would have been. I have no idea, but I just thought that Danny Garcia should have let his hands go more, and and take the initiative more than he actually did. But again, you can credit that to Spence, because again, Spence was pushing the pace. He was aggressive. He was in close, in the pockets, always, there in front of Danny Garcia, walking him down basically, and then taking the fight to him. And that's the way, especially with the jab, he was working behind that jab. Okay, and that's the way you're supposed to fight a guy like Danny Garcia. But again, the only surprising thing for me was how aggressive he was against Danny Garcia. I thought he would have maybe boxed at a distance more, but he didn't. He took the fight right to Danny Garcia, and I guess that was the most effective way to fight Danny Garcia, because he did better than Spence. That is, he did better against Garcia than Porter or Thurman did. And so it was a great fight, a great effort by Spence. I like what I saw. Okay, but like I said, there were things that Danny could have done that he didn't do, and I'm thinking that if there was a different fighter in there, they would have done those things against Spence. I mean, Spence was very hittable, but Danny Garcia couldn't seem to hit him as much as he would have liked to. And even though Spence was there to be hit, because like I said, he was pushing the pace, he was walking Danny Garcia down, so it wasn't like he was, boxing, moving backwards, or keeping a distance, keeping himself at range from Danny Garcia. He was right in the pocket with Garcia. Okay, which I didn't expect him to do that. I expect him to box more, stay more at range, but he didn't do that. He was very aggressive, and that strategy worked very well against Garcia. Unexpectedly, that is. So it was a great fight. I mean, you can't take that away from Spence. Okay, he was very effective in what he did. The strategy was very effective, and he executed it almost to perfection. Well, now Danny Garcia. I mean, this is like his third fight. He done lost at welterweight now. Every time he came up against elite competition, whether it be Porter, Thurman, or now Errol Spence, he came up short. So. I don't know, what we can say about Danny Garcia. I mean, it's not like his career is over or anything, but, he's not really stepping up his game when he's against elite competition, for whatever reason. I mean, I don't know what it is. I don't know if he needs a new trainer. I think probably a new trainer would probably help him, different strategy in how he approaches fights. Would probably help him, because he does have some power, but again, that power didn't make an appearance against Spence, it seemed like. But I think the reason why it didn't was the way Spence was fighting. Spence had the right strategy, and he came in there and he executed, almost to perfection, like I said. So it was a great fight by Spence. But again, there were some weaknesses there that could have been capitalized on if Danny Garcia would have been more aggressive in his approach to the fight. That's just how I see it, and I think that Spence basically nullified whatever it is that Danny Garcia was trying to do. He never seemed to be able to catch himself and to execute his strategy, whatever that was supposed to be. I have no idea. Because it never manifested itself in the fight really. I mean, except for maybe a couple of instances here and there where he was, he threw some good punches and he connected, but he should have threw more punches and connected more against Spence because, like I said, Spence was there to be caught. He wasn't, he wasn't keeping himself at a distance from Danny Garcia. He was right in Danny Garcia's face, and Danny Garcia seemed, unable to capitalize, on that. So, again, I think it's safe to say that Danny Garcia needs to go back to the drawing board and kind of rethink his approach in how he deal with these fights against elite competition, because he's been coming up short. He done came up short 3 times now. Okay, and so I think he needs to make some changes. So what's next for Spence? Now, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I don't really think. I mean, Spence did some good things in there, but maybe I don't know if he was actually 100%. Like I said, he looked like maybe he was about 90%, maybe 95. Okay, and definitely not 100% Spence. I think if he was 100%, he would have been worse for Danny Garcia in that fight, because again, I was kind of impressed in the way Spence took the fight to Danny. Okay, unlike how Keith Thurman Keith Thurman did that also for the first 6 rounds of the fight against Danny Garcia, and in the last 6 rounds he kind of backed off, and then Porter did the opposite. He backed off for the first 6 rounds and then took the fight to Danny after the 6 rounds. But Spence took the fight to Danny the whole 12 rounds basically. Okay, and he was more aggressive than both Porter and Spence in the way he fought Danny, and he was right there. And Danny couldn't seem to capitalize on that fact. So yeah, it was a great performance by Spence. Okay, now if he was fighting somebody like Crawford, I think it would have been a different outcome. Okay, I don't think he could have done what he did against Garcia against Crawford, because again, just like how, just like how the jab, like I said, the jab would have been a big factor in the fight, and it was. That's why I said in my pre-fight prediction. You can go and look at it, and the jab was a big factor. In a fight against Crawford, I think that hand speed was going to be a big factor. Okay, and unlike Danny Garcia, Crawford is not afraid to let his punches go, and when he throw punches, he throw them in bunches. Okay, he throw combinations, and I think it's clear that Crawford hits harder than Danny Garcia, I believe. I think Crawford is probably the hardest hitting welterweight at this point, in the welterweight division, from what I've seen, because he's been knocking guys out left and right. So I mean, guys that never been knocked out or knocked down before. So I think it would be safe to say that in a fight between Spence and Crawford, hand speed is going to be a big difference, and also power. Because I mean, people talk about how powerful Spence is and how he goes to the body and this and that, but he's knocking anybody out. So I mean, why are we talking about how Spence's power if he's not knocking anybody out? Are you knocking them down? I mean, he knocked down Sean Porter, but Porter didn't stay down. He got right back up. I mean, so I don't really think that Spence power is as I think it's overrated in his power, that is. I mean, he hits, he sits on his punches and he goes to the body and he does, got a great jab, but I don't think he has the power that people think that he has, because we saw that he hasn't been really knocking anybody out recently, and couldn't he did knock out Mikey Garcia, did knock out uh Sean Porter, did knock out Danny Garcia, and he really did knock out Kell Brook. Kell Brook eye socket got damaged and he had to stop it, and he basically uh quit the fight. So I mean, but he didn't want to get any more injury to his eye socket. So I mean, that wasn't really a knockout per se. It was just a technical knockout, technical stoppage actually, not a technical knockout, technical stoppage. So he didn't actually knock out. Uh, uh, he didn't knock out Kell Brook, not the way Crawford knocked out Kell Brook. I mean, Crawford basically stopped Kell Brook, gave him dizzy feet and had him stumbling all over the place, and the referee had to jump in and stop it because he'd have been knocked out cold. Okay, so it's a big difference. Okay, so I think we can safely say that when it comes to the power, Crawford definitely have the edge on Spence, and hand speed he definitely have the edge on Spence, and so I'm looking forward to see that fight happening, even though I doubt that Spence is gonna get in the ring with Crawford anytime soon, because he's been basically ducking Crawford now for 3 years, and him and his fans were making all kind of excuses about why the fight with Crawford shouldn't happen, this, that, Crawford's record, this, that, and the other, all nothing but excuses from top to bottom. I mean, excuse after excuse after excuse as to why he doesn't want to get in the ring with Crawford, 60-40 split, all this foolishness. So I mean, we see, basically, I mean, it's I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, I've said it before, and I'm gonna keep saying it until he get in the ring with Crawford. He's ducking Crawford, okay, and I think you will have to say that he has good reason to duck Crawford, because Crawford is a whole different animal, and I don't think he feels confident that he could actually get in there and beat Crawford. And I think that if Crawford and Spence were to get in the ring, I think Crawford would probably stop him. Okay, that's my opinion. I think Spence would actually get stopped by Crawford, and I think Spence and his team knows that. Okay, and so they make up all kind of excuses as to why the fight with Crawford it doesn't happen. They talk about Crawford's record, about who he's fighting. I mean, you have some of these commentators, LDBC fanboys out there talking about Spence is number one pound for pound. I mean, it's a joke. After he beat Danny Garcia, I mean, a guy that lost twice the elite competition, never really stepped up to the plate and accomplished anything. I mean, how are you gonna compare? If I mean, you even hear Derek James talking about Garcia's record, is better than Crawford, and that Crawford had the weakest record at 147 pounds. Well, if that's the case, if Danny Garcia got the better resume, why isn't he champion? Why hasn't he won a championship? Why hasn't he, beat? Why didn't he beat Thurman? Why didn't he beat Porter? I mean, if his resume is so great, and his record is so great, why isn't he a champion at 147 pounds? I mean, this kind of talk is so silly. I don't, when you even have a coach coming out and making silly comments like that, I mean, it just shows you the level of respect that they have for Crawford, in a way. I mean, it's like a backward way of showing how much respect they have for Crawford, because they're saying any and everything to keep out of the ring. They say everything but let's make the fight. Okay, they talk about how weak Crawford's record is, how weak his competition is, but yet still, the whole boxing world has Crawford as number one pound for pound above Spence, but yet Spence got the better record. How did that happen? I mean, it's foolishness. I mean, so all this talk and this by these LDBC fanboys is just pure foolish talk, and anybody with any common sense can see it for what it is. They're basically protecting Spence. They don't want him to get in there with Crawford. They want, I mean, how is it that these guys are saying, these LDBC fanboys out there talking about, oh, Crawford needs to fight Porter. He's not fighting in the body. Why does he want to fight? I mean, so here Crawford is, is damned if he do, damned if he don't. He's getting criticized for not wanting to fight Porter, but wanting to fight Spence. Now, Spence beat Porter. So if he wants to fight Spence instead of Porter, wouldn't that be the most dangerous fight? How are you going to claim that Porter is a dangerous fight for Crawford when Spence beat Porter and Crawford wants to fight Spence? And you're trying to make it a negative because he wants to fight Spence instead of Porter. I mean, only LDBC fanboy will come up with some kind of silly reasoning like that. Okay? I mean, he wants to fight the best. So, but you want him to fight the second best or the third or the fourth best instead of fighting Spence. You want him to fight everybody but Spence. Okay? They want to put everybody, So basically, I think what it comes down to is that they're hoping that, Porter can beat Crawford, and that way, they take the pressure off of Errol Spence. But I mean, that's not going to happen. I think that Porter himself said that, he doesn't believe that Spence can beat Crawford because as according to Porter, Crawford has too many tools in the toolbox. I mean, it's a quote. I mean, that's what he said. So he, Sean Porter, who fought Errol Spence almost to a draw, is saying, out of his own mouth that he doesn't believe that Spence can beat Crawford. So now Spence beat Porter. So if Porter is saying that he doesn't believe that Spence can beat Crawford, what does he say about a fight with him and Crawford? I mean, I know Porter's a tough fighter and he probably will fight anybody, but I think deep down he knows that he can't really beat Crawford because if Spence couldn't beat Crawford, even though style make fights, I just don't see him beating. I just don't see Porter beating Crawford, and right now, Porter is a mandatory to fight Crawford, so. Why doesn't he, if he really wants to fight Crawford, everybody's saying, he should fight Crawford, that should be his next fight. Well, activate the mandatory then and fight Crawford if that's the case. It's in the ball is in your court. You're the mandatory Porter, you're the mandatory for Crawford, you're the mandatory for Spence as well. But, I don't see you activate the mandatory. Why not? It's not up to Crawford. It's up to you. Activate your mandatory. If you really want to fight with Crawford, then activate the mandatory and fight Crawford. But we don't see that happening. So all this is just, this Porter talking about he want to fight Crawford. He just talk. Because if he really wanted to fight Crawford, he would have activated the mandatory by now. But, lately we see that, because Porter previously was saying that, he hasn't fought, Crawford. He had fought Spence already. And, he wants to test himself in there against the best. And, he'd rather fight Crawford than fight Spence because he already fought Spence. But after the performance we saw, with Spence against Garcia and some of the weaknesses that we saw in Spence's game, even though he it was a great fight he had against Danny Garcia, they showed some weaknesses. But after that, we see people like Manny Pacquiao and Porter saying now they want to fight Spence. Now Porter is backtracking and fighting Crawford and talking about, I think I want to do I might want to do the rematch with Spence now because you saw some weaknesses there, because, like I said, there was a few things that, we saw there, which I don't think Spence is back to 100% yet. So now they want to jump on Spence and take advantage of that. Both Manny Pacquiao and Porter. So, it is what it is. But again, so Crawford, Porter, again, the ball is in his court. If he really wants to fight against Iceman Bud Crawford, all you have to do is activate his mandatory. It's his prerogative. He can do that anytime. And so, but we don't see him doing that. So, all this talk from all these, fanboys out there about the Porter Crawford fight, if you really want to see the fight, put some pressure on Porter to activate his mandatory and let the fight happen. but we don't see Porter doing that, and I doubt if he's going to do it, especially when he couldn't get a rematch with Spence, and probably beat Spence in the second fight. Okay, I mean, I don't know how that fight would turn out, but if I believe if it was Porter fighting Spence instead of Danny Garcia, he would have done better than Danny Garcia, and he did do better than Danny Garcia in the first fight. So I think with Spence coming off that injury in this fight against Garcia, if that was Porter in there, he would have took advantage of some of the weaknesses we saw, and I think he would have beat Spence. But we can speculate all we want to, but that doesn't really mean anything much. So it is what it is. Spence already defeated Porter. He defeated Danny Garcia. I just don't think that he can defeat Crawford, especially with what we saw in the Danny Garcia fight. Although it was a good performance by Spence, but again, he did a good. It was a great performance, but again, we saw some weaknesses there that I think that Crawford would have taken advantage of, that Danny Garcia didn't seem able to do. So it is what it is. So again, it looks like the next fight for Spence is not going to be. It's not going to be Crawford, because we see that both Sean Porter and Manny Pacquiao are showing interest in fighting Spence, and so he's probably going to fight one of those guys next. And I don't think he really wants to fight Crawford anyway. So any excuse he can use not to fight Crawford, he's going to take it. And that's basically what he's doing. Because again, we could talk about everybody keep talking about Crawford is on the other side of the street, this, that, and the other. But I mean, what side of the street are we talking about? I mean, Errol Spence is, has man down promotion. He's a promoter for his own fight. Al Haymon doesn't promote Errol Spence's fight. He's just Spence's advisor. So the real side of the street that we're talking about is man down promotion. That's which is controlled by Errol Spence. So if he really wanted the fight to happen against Crawford, it could happen tomorrow. But again, he doesn't want that fight. And people can say what they want to, but it is what it is. And I'm going to keep saying it. And, I don't think Errol Spence is going to get in the ring. We saw what he said about, why he doesn't understand why Errol Crawford is coming to his fight. He want to go play with his horses and his kids and blah, blah, this and blah, blah, that. And he doesn't, understand why Crawford is coming to his fights. I mean, it sounded kind of lame, excuse me, what he was saying, but it's not surprising considering the fact that he really doesn't want to fight Crawford, and so we've seen that play out right in front of us. Okay, he doesn't want to fight Crawford under any circumstances, and so it is what it is. But again, I don't think that fight is going to happen, like I said, between Spence and Crawford, unless we actually, the fans and the boxing community, are going to have to drag Spence into the ring against Crawford for that fight to happen. And so it is what it is. I mean, that's what it is. Whatever these LDBC, talking about fighting Canelo, this, that, and the other. I mean, again, like I said, that's just talk. It's not going to be in a fight with Canelo. It's just another way of taking the attention off the Crawford-Spence fight. And that's, just cloud chasing, by Spence and his team and his commentators and his fanboys out there, because they don't want to see Spence fight Crawford, because they know what's going to happen. Okay, we see how dominant Crawford is looking, and I think he'll be just as dominating against Spence if they were able to step in the ring together. So again, in terms of the fight with Danny Garcia, great fight by Spence. He did much better than I expected him to do. Great performance. Congratulations on the win. But you need to step up your game, Spence, and go in there against Crawford. But by the end of the day, I'm gonna say this. I can understand why he doesn't want to go in there against Crawford. We saw what Crawford did with Kell Brook, and I can understand why Spence would be wouldn't want to get in there with Crawford, especially right now, because Crawford is just too dominant of a fighter for him, and I don't think that he can, I think he's well aware of the fact that Crawford is a dangerous fighter, and that he could probably get stopped if he was to go against Crawford at this point, or any point actually, in his career. So it is what it is. Again, great fight against Danny Garcia by Spence. He really did the job against Garcia. Congratulations on that fight. I think I'm going to leave it there. This is TBE Boxing. I'm out.